On April 9th at 1 p.m., Marc Nathan passed away. To quote Stephen Page, Marc Nathan was a record person of the highest order. And like Stephen, he was an FOTM. Marc Nathan was such a Toronto Mike fan, he personally asked Barry Harris of Concan, Marin Cadell, and Paul Schaefer if they'd be my guest. In order, Barry dropped by for an amazing episode, Marin will eventually make his Toronto Mike debut, and Paul politely declined. But I was so appreciative of Marc for doing that for me. In December 2023, I spoke with Marc about his efforts with Concan and Marin Cadell, but especially his role in the Bare Naked Ladies story. He's the man who introduced Bare Naked Ladies to Seymour Stein at Sire. Here's my conversation with Marc Nathan, who will be missed by the many who loved him. Marc, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm good, thanks. So whereabouts do we find you today?
I am in Nashville, Tennessee, where I've lived for almost 11 years.
Okay, so this is a Toronto microcast, so it's something a little different. But I'm curious, how did I come on your radar? Like, how did you, Marc Nathan, discover Toronto Mike exists?
I discovered your podcast through Stephen Page, a very good friend of mine and a friend of Toronto Mike.
An FOTM, and you're now an FOTM too, so you got that in common. I'm going to see Stephen Page next week. He's in the Trans-Canada Highwaymen, and I'll be checking them out.
Absolutely, with Craig Northey and Mo Berg and Chris
Murphy.
I'm stumped.
It's Chris Murphy.
Exactly, from Sloan.
That's right. So, you live in Nashville. Is it safe to say, not that there's anything wrong with it, but is it safe to say you're an American?
I am. I was born and raised in New York City.
So how did you, there's a few things I want to touch on here, but how did you become good friends with Stephen Page?
Well, let's see. I grew up in New York. I was in the music industry by the time I was 16 years old. I was a huge Guess Who fan. We'll start there. Bought 45s by Andy Kim, the Poppy Family, albums by Kensington Market, The Collectors. So I had this bit of Canadian music infused in my system. My first label gig was at a label called Ampex Records, and Ampex distributed an American label called Big Tree, who had April Wine, You Could Have Been a Lady. Wow. We just lost Miles, of course. And also a 45 by Thunder Mug called Africa. And so I learned about Canadian radio a little bit. I grew up DXing the AM dial and found CKLW. And of course, all my radio stations started with W. So when I heard a C, I knew it was Canadian. Also a huge hockey fan. So that's the backstory. My label gigs took me through Mushroom Records, where I worked Doucette and Chilliwack, then RCA, where I worked Triumph, Doug and the Slugs, and Bruce Coburn. And what happened was a radio friend named Don Burns, and Don, the late Don Burns, worked at CFNY. And I started going up to Toronto to visit my friend Don. And he introduced me to David Marsden. I really became an avid CFNY listener. And now we're getting to the part of the story where I worked for Atlantic Records, and I tried to get a job working at WEA with Kim Cook and Bob Roper. But to hire an American, a U.S. guy, you had to prove that a Canadian couldn't do the job as well as the U.S. guy. And so I never got the gig. But at Atlantic, we had Frozen Ghost, and I became very close friends with Rob Lanny. And we also had Blue Rodeo. We put out a Gowan record, I think. Now we're almost getting to the Stephen Page part. I'm a little long-winded.
No, I'm loving this because you're more Canadian than most Canadians, I think. This is tremendous.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I've always felt that if I believed in reincarnation, I was a goalpost at Maple Leaf Gardens in my last life. So I continue on, and it's 1988, and I'm visiting Don in Toronto, and I'm at a club, and I hear a record I've never heard before. Now, I've been a radio promo guy for 17 years at that point, right? So I hear this song, and it hits me like a hit record hits me, and I've never heard it. And I yell up to the DJ booth, "What is that?" And he yells down, "Con Can." Wow. And I'm like, "Con Can?"
Was a time and there once was a way. We had something going, and to my dismay, attention to me seemed to drift, though I don't know where. And when we're alone, seems there's nothing to say. I bring up the topic, you push it away. You say that you do, but I think it's just you don't care. Why do I feel you're using me? Are we an item or are we just two? I need some commitments, all I ask of you. Your lifestyle can change, don't be afraid what you think's in store. What's on your mind? You've got lots to lose. Your shallow acquaintance is what's there to choose. You won't get too deep even though I'm worth so much more. So think about it carefully.
Do you want to hustle?
Right. That's right. Rock.
Do you want to salsa?
Right. That's right. Rock.
Do you want to hustle?
Right. That's right. Rock.
Do you want to salsa?
If that's how you want it, that's how it'll be. There's no use in trying or making you see that love don't come easy, you don't know what it's about. To get things together won't take anything. Don't need to see it from you never again. From this day on, lesson learned, no more games, count me out. And you know what I'm talking about.
Smile for a while, let's be jolly. Sunshine
a crime that I'm not to find someone to.
So I go out to a vinyl record store on Queen Street, and I buy 5 copies of this record called I Beg Your Pardon on a little independent label out of Hamilton. And I bring it back to the States. I give 1 copy to my boss. I keep 1 copy. And I send 3 copies to radio stations in Houston, Texas, and they add the record. And my boss is like, "What do you mean they added the record? We haven't signed it yet." And I said, "Well, you better sign it." So they signed it. It became a huge international single. We did an album, was less of a huge hit, but we sold in excess of 100,000 records. And I was on the map as an A&R guy after being a promo guy. So they moved me into A&R. Well, by 1991, I had had a bunch of success with Con-Can and then with another pop band called Lanier. They made me the dance music guy for groups like Camouflage and The Beloved, who were not Canadian. But I tried to sign a group called the Cowsills. Now, I don't know how far back you go, but the Cowsills had big pop records in the 60s, and they were the precursor to the Partridge Family. So here we are in 1991, and I've seen the 40-some-odd-year-old Cowsills, and I think they're amazing, and I want to sign them. And my boss freaks out. You can't sign these old, has-beens, even though he loved the music. But when I told him who it was, he got indignant, and I got indignant, and he fired me. So now I'm out of a job for the first time since I'm 16 years old. I'm 36, and Atlantic has kicked me on my ass. And it's a new music seminar. And, well, I'll back it up a little bit. I had recently been to Toronto, and I heard a song on the radio called The Sweater by Marin Cadell. And I flipped out. I just thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever heard.
Girls, I know you will understand this and feel the intrinsic, incredible emotion. You have just pulled over your head the worn, warm sweater belonging to a boy. Now, you haven't had a passionate kissing session or anything, but you got to go on a camping trip with him and 8 other people from school. And you practically slept together, your sleeping bag right next to his. And you woke in the night to watch him as he slept, but you couldn't see anything because it was dark, so you just lay there and listened to his breathing and wondered if your heart might burst. The sweater has that slightly goat-like smell which all teenage boys possess. And that smell will lovingly transfer to all your other clothes. If you get to keep it for a few days, you can sleep with it, but don't let your mom see because she'll say, "What is that filthy thing, and who does it belong besides the trash man?" So you have to keep it under the covers with you. You can kind of lie it beside you, or wrap it around your waist, or touch it on your legs, or whatever, but that's your business. Now, if the sweater has like reindeer on it, or is a funny color like yellow, I'm sorry, you can't get away with a sweater like that. Look for brown, or gray, or blue. Anything other than that, and you know you're dealing with someone who's different. And different is not what you're looking for. You're looking for those teenage alpine ski chiseled features and that sort of blank look which passes for deep thought, or at least the notion that someone's home. You're looking for the boy of your dreams who is the same boy in the dreams of all of your friends. Now, the sweater isn't going to fit you, of course. You have to kind of roll up the sleeves in a jaunty way that says, "This is the sweater belonging to a boy, and the boy is a genuine hunk of burnin' love, and this is not just some hand-me-down from your brother or your father." Monday, wear the sweater to school. Be calm, look cute. Don't tell him the dream you had about the place the two of you would share when you get older. Just be yourself. The best, cutest, quietest version of yourself. Definitely wear lip gloss. He looks at you, and he looks away, and then he walks away, and the smell of the sweater hits you again suddenly like ape scent gloriola, and you get a note passed to you by a girl in history that says he needs his sweater back. He forgot that you put it on in a tent on Saturday, and he's been looking for it. And you don't have to die of humiliation, you know. You are a strong person, and this is a learning experience. You can still hold your head up high as you run from the classroom tearing the stinking sweater from your body. You look at that sweater carefully, and you realize that love made you temporarily blind. You got a secret now, honey, and though you would never sink as low as him, you could blab it all over the school if you wanted. The label in that sweater said 100% acrylic.
I go to the new music seminar, and there's a Canadian music panel. And I'm in the Canadian music panel listening to people talk, and they said, all right, we're going to take questions from the audience. I raised my hand, and I said, I've recently been to Toronto, and I bought this album, Angel Food for Thought by Maren Cadell. I think it's fantastic. What else is big in Canada that I should know about that the States doesn't know yet? And one by one, they went down the panel and they said, bare naked ladies, bare naked ladies, bare naked ladies. And I'm like, okay. Then this chubby guy in shorts and like a Charlie Brown t-shirt is in the room, and I look at him and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And I get tapped on the shoulder after the session, and a guy says, I'm Stuart Ravenhill, and I have a label called Intrepid Records in Canada. I manage Maren Cadell. I'd like you to meet her. And all of a sudden, I'm face to face with Maren Cadell at the end of the panel. And she says, we're going to the Canadian Music Showcase tonight. Would you like to go? I said, great, I would love to. So I'm with Maren, we're talking, and Maren and Stuart and I are talking about my possibly representing Maren, U.S., and shopping the album in the States, and I'm thrilled at that idea. And the lights go down, and this band comes on the stage, and there's that chubby guy in the Charlie Brown shirt, and he has the voice of an angel. I think Stephen Page is up there with Burton Cummings, Tom Jones, my favorite singers of all time. And this kid is singing Brian Wilson, Be My Yoko Ono, If I Had $1 Million. I flipped out. And it was at that point in the summer of 1991 that I realized that I was grateful to have been fired by Atlantic, because the way I brought the Cowsills and ended up getting fired, if I had brought bare naked ladies to Atlantic, they would have laughed me out of the room. And in fact, a lot of labels laughed me out of the room. But one label, Sire, a guy named Seymour Stein, said to me, Mark, they're like Simon and Garfunkel for the 90s. And that was a man with great vision. And he signed Talking Heads, he signed the Ramones, he signed Madonna. I mean, the list goes on. And he signed both Bare Naked Ladies and Marin Cadell. Now, I was managing Marin Cadell. I was not managing Bare Naked Ladies. And I ended up being an honorary Gordon without participation, but I made lifelong friends. And I was lifelong friends with Stephen and Ed, and later Kevin Hearn, and of course Tyler and Jim. But when Stephen and the ladies split, my allegiance kind of moved more towards Stephen. And the rest of, Kevin and I are still in touch, but the rest of the guys and I are a bit estranged, though everybody does remember that I brought Bare Naked Ladies to Sire Records in 1991, much to the chagrin of their manager, Nigel Best, at the time, but that's a whole nother story.
Drove downtown in the rain, 9:30 on a Tuesday night, just to check out the late night record shop. Call it impulsive, call it compulsive, call it insane. But when I'm surrounded, I just can't stop. It's a matter of instinct, it's a matter of conditioning, and a matter of fact. You can go where Pablo's dog. Ring a bell and I'll salivate. How'd you like that? Dr. Landy, tell me you're not just a pedagogue. 'Cause right now I'm lying in bed, just like Brian Wilson did. Well, I'm lying in bed, just like Brian Wilson did.
Mark, this is all wild stuff. Mind blow after mind blow. When Seymour Stein passed away, I did jump on a Zoom with Stephen Page to get the full story.
Yes.
And I guess you've heard that probably.
That was the first time I was turned on to your podcast.
Wow. So you brought Bare Naked Ladies to Seymour Stein at Sire.
Absolutely.
You signed Con-Can, which is already quite a mind blow. I beg your pardon, was a huge jam. Marin Cadell, his sweater, all over Much Music, all over the radio, huge jam. Am I right that you managed Carol Pope for a moment or two?
I managed Carol Pope. I managed John James. And I had heard you reference John James in a podcast, which was why I finally said, oh, I've got to contact this guy and, let him know my intersection because, it just, there were a lot of things. When I was at Universal, I signed a group out of the UK called London Bus Stop, and they covered You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. So I had a Randy Bachman connection.
Right.
Dave Bedini and I are very close friends, so I have that connection. I'm all over the map with you, so I figured, micro or not, I needed to get myself in here.
I'm glad you did. I'm very glad you did. Now, John James came up, if I remember correctly. Cam Gordon was kicking out forgotten jams. Like it was basically he'd play the song and ask me if I remember. And I had no memory of John James, and that's on me probably. I've had a few glaring omissions for some reason.
It wasn't a huge hit. It was kind of a secret weapon record, if you will.
Okay. Do you know how John is doing these days?
I haven't talked to John in quite a while, and I was looking for an email address or a phone number because it has been at least 15 years, but I hope he's doing well. He was a very talented guy. He did 2 albums for Attic. The first one had I Want to Know, and that was called Big Fat Soul. And then the second one was Mothers of Hope, which did a little less. And that was the end of our relationship. But he was a great guy. I loved him.
And how are you holding up? How are you doing these days?
Well, I'm 68. I've got kidney failure, diabetes. I'm on dialysis. I broke my ankle. I screwed up the recovery, and they had to do a fusion. So I have a steel rod in my foot. I'm a Jewish mess, but I'm still alive, and my brain is fine. It's just the rest of me is failing terribly.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear all this, but I'm glad the mind is sharp, and I'm very glad we connected and I could capture these stories. I'm so glad we did this. Thank you, Mark.
You're more than welcome.